So we're here with a question and answer session with Mark Murphy, notable film and TV director. Episode 1, we're going to talk to Mark about an introduction to his life and early work. So welcome, Mark. How are you?
I'm okay, thank you very much. I apologize in advance if the Amazon delivery turns up in the middle of this.
Don't worry, it just makes it more realistic. Okay. So, Mark, when did you get started? When did film and television as a career become, I suppose, an early aspiration and then a reality?
The specific point where I knew I wanted to be a film director was when I saw Batman in 1989, the only decent
Really?
one, the best version with Michael Keaton. I was in the cinema during the trailers. There was an advert for Carling Black Label where they had a riff on King Arthur throwing the sword into the lake, and the way it was shot was so beautiful. Even though it was just a pastiche advert, it was just the way it was shot and set up. The mood was it just engaged me to the point I was like, I want to do that. And then following that, when the film started, I was like, yeah, I really want to do that. The film was the first film I'd ever seen that really sort of sucked me in. I was about 12 at that point when I realized this is what I want to do. I thought it was a pipe dream. So I thought, well, it would be lovely to be that, but let's be realistic. So I thought I'm gonna follow in my dad's shoes, which is to be a pilot because I love travel
Right.
as well. But then I realized the qualifications I'd need, things like physics, I absolutely sucked at. When I was about 17, I went up to a film school up in Yorkshire and got offered an unconditional place there. So I was like, okay, well let's give this a go. Which this was in the middle of my A level. So from that point on, I actually just completely gave up. In fact, so much so that in my maths A level, I decided to have a sleep after answering half a question. I just thought there's absolutely no point. I've got this. I'm wasting my time here. And to this day, I've never been asked to provide what A level results I've had.
No,
So
I'm guessing not. I mean, it doesn't have a lot of bearing in a lot of industries, does it?
no,
Let's be honest.
no. And because I went to film school, not university, because back then there wasn't a lot of practical courses in the way there are now, because obviously equipment's a lot cheaper. Back then, there wasn't really a thing as digital cameras. It was all either format or films. So,
Right.
and the same with editing. There were very few places that were offering it, and that's obviously what I wanted. That's when I knew. And after graduating, I did work in film, but at the sort of bottom rung as runner. Didn't like that so much, or rather, I was impatient. So I thought I'm gonna make my own way there, and I shot a 30-minute film. And this being 1997, again, no high def digital cameras. It was I shot on Super 16mm. I was like, great, here we go. This is my calling card. I got it onto TV, onto ITV, and then nothing happened for about 8 years. We had no idea what I was doing. I had an agent who didn't really operate within, well, she operated within TV, but not for directors. And so
Uh-huh.
I just kind of floated around, having to take jobs here, there, and everywhere. Decided to sort of reinvent myself, learned how to edit, started working on as many low budget projects as I could to build up the CV, and then managed to get a gig when I was 28 directing a 6-part drama documentary series on Casanova, which is an excellent learning opportunity because I made so many mistakes, and it was
Yeah.
a great opportunity to actually say, okay, these are all the things you shouldn't be doing, which I sort
Right.
of did very well. But I started doing film when I was 35 in about 2012. That's when I managed to focus on one genre, as it were, or part of production. And that's what I've stayed in since film production.
Okay. Yeah, you write as well, don't you? Because you write the script as
Yeah.
well as filming it. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, unless you've got like a career in something like commercials or an established filmmaking career, it's actually very hard to make a name for yourself, and even harder to have someone put money into a script that they think, you know what, we'd like you to direct this. So quite often you have to make your own luck, create your
Okay.
own opportunity. So if you've got your own script, then at least you can try and raise money off that. Otherwise, sort of counting on the charity of other script writers to give you something you can tout. And the reality is, if people are going to let you have their script for basically nothing, it's usually because it's not an experienced writer who's written it. It's better to create your own opportunity. And after a while, it just became habit.
You said you found your own niche. You found the thing, the bit of film that you love.
Yes, the first two that I did, first one was a horror, second one was psychological thriller, and I realized I'm really not any good at horror. The last three films I did were comedies. That seems to be a happier fit. Usually unromantic comedies, but comedy anyway, and that seems to be where my strength lies.
Do you think that most filmmakers go through that sort of evolution? You're trying a few different things and then you find the one that really, really suits you?
No. And I mean, it's not that I did a horror because I thought that's where I might be good at. I did a horror because that's what I was able to do. Horror is basically a cheaper genre to film. You don't need big names. You can do it in less locations. The budgets for horrors tend to be significantly lower than other genres. So that was the reason I went into horror. I think most people go into filmmaking knowing the genre sort of keen on because they connect to various films that inspire them. And that's what sort of leads them to go down that genre. That being said, films that inspire me aren't necessarily comedies. But so in my case, yeah, I think it is a bit of dabbling to see what works for me. But that being said, there are some scripts that I've written which are drama, and there's even one which still comedy, but it has a bit more action in it. So,
but surely that's part of an evolution as well. That you grow and your projects grow and change also.
Yes, but when you're playing with that much money, you shouldn't be, exploring your potential with someone else's money to that degree. You should sort of have a little bit more foundation beforehand. I'm sort of impatient, so I was like, okay, here's an opportunity. I'm just going to grab it, whether I'm right for it or not. Well, the first film I did was very low budget, so there was no expectation. But by the second one, it was okay. This is money. We need to make money back on this. So that one was okay. It's actually got a small fan following, funny enough.
Do you feel a sense of responsibility to your financial backers?
Basically, yeah. I mean, as anyone should. You know, it's for two reasons. They've put the money in, they've taken a leap of faith in you. So there is a responsibility to give them money back. But from a selfish point of view, if you don't give them their money back, you're not going to be getting more money from them. And you'll get a name for someone who's, losing people money. I mean, it's hard enough to get investment in film at the best of times. It's anathema. It's poison to investors. So yeah, you don't want to be someone who loses people money, otherwise that's a career over.
And that is the case. Is that the biggest pressure as a filmmaker, the funding and then the returning that investment?
No, I mean, the toughest thing in filmmaking is getting money. Money is the most important thing in film. In terms of making money back, if you've done a decent film, then that's all you can do. At the end of the day, after that, it's down to the sales agents and distributors to do their job. Of course, it's inevitable that if the film doesn't sell, there's going to be finger pointing, and it is going to come down to the film rather than was the sales agent or distributor capable or not. So there is, but like I say, once you've done the film, there's nothing else you can do but keep your fingers crossed and hope that the other people handle it well.
What type of movie inspires you? What do you turn to for inspiration?
I don't know. I mean, in some ways I'll look at things for inspiration, if I've got a project in mind, but actually usually I'll avoid films that might be inspiring if I'm working on a certain project, because then you might find yourself imitating it without realizing. So sometimes it's a good idea to avoid them. If there's a film that makes you feel something emotionally and it takes you into the moment, then that's all the inspiration you need, really, whatever the genre, because it's usually about character and that particular story arc, which can be applied to so many different genres and situations. there's really not that many films that I find inspiring. I used to go to the cinema 3 times a week. I'll go maybe 3 times a year now. There's a lack of inspiration at the moment, put it that way.
Do you have an old favourite movie? One that you will always
Yeah,
think is
I
your
mean,
favourite?
I have a top four. That's always there. No one can have a favorite film, but my top four are Jaws, which is
Yes.
an unbelievable film, no matter what people say. Thin Red Line, which is a fantastic film, and I'm saying that one next because the next two are going to sound cheesy. Batman, for obvious reasons, as I said, that
Yes.
was the film that got a 12-year-old me excited for cinema. Conan the Barbarian, which is Arnold
Really?
Schwarzenegger's first. Now, that obviously sounds like, okay, yeah, I must have cheese for brains or something, but it was written by Oliver Stone, so the script is good. It was before Arnold was Arnold, so there were no pithy one-liners or stupid kind of cheesy looks to camera or anything that followed after that. It's a John Milius directed film, and he did amazing films like The Big Wednesday and wrote Apocalypse Now. I mean, this is a really sort of special pedigree of filmmakers that were behind it. It is just an incredible film. I mean, I think Arnie has about 20 lines in the entire thing. But I definitely recommend people check it out. But yeah, for me, I just think it is an incredible bit of movie making. Yeah, there's actually a fifth one, and it probably supersedes most of those. Seven. I think that's an incredibly
Yeah, it's an incredible movie.
that draws you in.
If you were sat in front of a class now of aspiring filmmakers or aspiring scriptwriters even, where would you start them off in terms of advice? What would be the things you would say to them?
I mean, it's tough, really. I mean, you can sort of give sort of more sort of clerical advice, like look at the market, who's your audience, what is it that studios would want to put money in, what sells. Don't write something that is no one's going to watch, but then at the same time,
Sure.
write your strengths. If you've got a personal story that only you can tell, then do that as well. I think for a bit of advice I'd give going forward is just the format of how you do it. I used to sit down and just write a script. You shouldn't. You should spend proper time going through a treatment, write out the skeleton of the film, write out the storyline, subplots, etc., for the characters, and just be able to see it and see if it makes sense, see what's missing, see how characters are interacting. And once you've got that, then writing the script is basically just fleshing out the dialogue, which is going to be a lot easier. My second bit of advice is when you get to the script writing stage, just write until the end. Don't stop in terms of do 20 pages and then go back and read it. Just don't read it until you
Okay.
finished it, because otherwise it's gonna get very stilted. It's like I don't know, cutting your hair, doing it half and then thinking, actually, no, I'm going to do this bit again. It's just going to
Right.
be disappointed. So yeah, when you start writing the script, just go to the end before you try reading anything.
That's really interesting. So all the drafts go through as one draft, and then you go back and edit as one, and you just
Yeah,
go from beginning to end.
yeah,
Oh, that's really interesting.
yeah. And the other thing is don't put yourself under sort of pressure in terms of a target of how many pages you must write a day. That's not how it works. I mean, in a sense, for some films out there which are very formulaic, then I guess they probably would put a target down because the structure's pretty much already there. For a decent, something original, let the thing write itself at its own pace. Don't sort of feel bad if you don't write much in a day.
Mark, I think we've taken enough of your time up for today. We're going
Because
to
I
come
thought
back to
that.
this as another episode and another segment soon. And we'll talk some more about your projects that you've just finished,
Yeah,
projects that you've got coming up, and some more advice for people who are currently just starting out. Because
yeah.
I think sitting and listening to someone who's done it all before is going to be really helpful for people. So,
I can definitely give advice on what they shouldn't do. And also, I don't need any competition. So, my principal advice is don't do it. Just wait for me to get a bigger career and then you can consider starting. But
uh,
yeah, okay. Well, I hope there's
perfect.
something there then.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. So, Mark Murphy, thank you so much for your time. And I think that's everything we need.